Hi, and welcome to this week's recovery. This week is a very special recovery. This is Barney's story. Thank you. Okay, hi Deb. Welcome to the
Hi.
recovery. This week's one isn't about the normal drink and drug story of how you got clean and everything. This is about your son Barney, who I met in January 2018. And I met him in Thailand. I was over in Thailand at a treatment center, and I went over to and I was doing a share. I was telling my story to all the people that were in the treatment center, and afterwards, Barney came up to me and asked me if I could help him. He asked me if I could sponsor him because I was a DJ and because he was a DJ. That's what he always wanted to be, and our stories were not they weren't very similar, but there was enough connection for me to help him, and I was blown away by his honesty, and I took him on as a sponsee, and I said that I'd help him through his journey, and he came back to London. He was in another treatment centre, and I would see Barney twice a week on the Tuesday and the Thursday, and I would meet up with him, and we got on really well. He was a really bright, funny. He used to make me laugh, kid, and you know, but without going into straight away what happened and how it happened, I want to know what was Barney like as a kid.
He was he was fantastic. He was just as you described. He was funny and he was bright and he was massively loving and hugely popular. And he was just a really great he was a great kid, a great son.
So you got another son as well, right?
Yes, I have, yeah.
Yeah. So with Barney, did you notice as a kid that he had an obsessive personality or any addictive personality in any way, shape, or form, or was he just a normal kid?
Yeah, no, he was just you know, I would never in a million years have predicted him. I knew quite a lot about addiction because I work in the field, and
Hmm.
he would never have been somebody. He was what I would call, pretty regular, um, quite a rule follower, really, really popular with teachers, never pushed boundaries ever, very self-disciplined. So when the whole kind of drugs thing kicked in,
What point
I
did that kick in? How old was he when that kicked in?
15. So it started looking back, talking to his friends. It started at Reading Festival. So
Okay.
they kind of all went and said, let's have a little bit of a dabble. It's like a rite of passage. His first festival, he always loved music since he was sort of, early teens. But looking back, what they all subsequently told me was that even though it was his first experience of drugs at Reading, he was just not like all the others.
Yeah.
So they were saying, "Oh, we think we better stop now because we don't really know, what it's going to be like." And he was like, "No, no, come on."
Yeah. And so that was at 15. And then how quickly did it spiral out of control? What would you, how did you notice what was going on? When was it you first? Because his friends had told you that, but when did you actually think, oh my God, Barney's on
Yeah,
something, Barney's different to what Barney used to be like?
yeah. I think there were a few key signs that perhaps I didn't perhaps give enough importance to. I think dropping out of his A levels was
Yeah.
one. So he had a fabulous group of friends, very tight, a lot of them since primary school, and they were all on a very sort of traditional, going to do their GCSEs, off to do their A levels. And midway through his A levels, he said, "I don't want to do these anymore. I don't want to do it." So I was saying, "Oh, why?" And he said, "Oh, I just want to go get a job." So there was that. Then I noticed that when I started questioning him and saying, "I think that you are more than dabbling," he used to say in classic sort of denial, "We're all doing it. We're all doing it. What's the matter? It's the weekend. We all do it."
What was his first drug of choice? What was he dabbling on?
When he started, he was on MDMA.
Yeah.
He was never a big drinker, so alcohol really wasn't his thing. So MDMA mainly, and to be honest, what turned out to be his drug of choice was ketamine. But I don't actually know when that kicked in. But I think this kind of development that was happening that I wasn't aware of, because he used to say maybe we're talking maybe 17, maybe 17, 18, maybe 18. Yeah, 18. He'd say, "Oh, I'm going to go up to my room and watch a DVD." And I thought, "Oh, that sounds like a really lovely thing to do." And for a long time I was fooled. And then I realised, actually, he wasn't going up into his room to watch a DVD.
Yeah, he told me that most of his using was on his own. When he did ketamine, it was always within his own room. He would lock the door. He would be in his room using, and he was a very lonely addict in that sense. He wanted to do it on his own. He didn't want everybody around him. I kind of think, for me, when I used to take ketamine, I kind of always ended up on my own. It never started off as my own. Do you know what I mean? I'd be out with my friends, then I would take too much ketamine or too much, or whatever I took, and then they would all go because I was the loose cannon, and then I would end up in a situation where I was on my own doing my own drugs. But ketamine wasn't my favourite of drugs. It was never a drug of choice. It was more of a drug of convenience at the time. I had other issues obviously going on, and so what was Barney like when you challenged him?
He initially used to say, absolutely not, we're all doing it. And because I work in the field, he would always say to me, as far as you're concerned, anybody who's using anything has got an issue, which absolutely wasn't true. And he said, "And I'm fine. Look at me, I'm absolutely fine." And it took a long, long time before one of his best friends broke, what he regarded as confidence, and came to me and said, "We've got real concerns. It's now we go out on a normal night out, and he's completely out of it. He does it when it's not meant to be, a night of drugs. It's going to someone's house or it's going to the pub." And he was lying to them and saying, "I'm not on anything. No, I've just had a drink."
Yeah.
So the friend network began to say he's something else. And then, it came to the point where I eventually, when you're a parent, you've got a certain age, you've got, you think it's polite, you knock on your child's door, "Can I come in?" And then I just decided I'm not going to do that anymore. And I just used to walk into his room, and, there were these devastating scenes of him just, as you describe, just alone, looking desperate, using. And you realise it was just, he was just desperately unhappy. This wasn't somebody out on coke in a club having a great time. This was somebody by themselves in their bedroom, totally solitary. And you could see it was just a desperate, desperate time.
So how did you get him from his bedroom to go to treatment?
So what happened? So the first time, what I did was I said, "I think you've got to accept that this is now a problem." And he said, "Okay, I admit I've got a problem. I can't stop using." So we started off, and he used to have once a week appointments. And that went on for a while. And he used to, really, to be honest, he was playing the game. He was pretending that he was really trying, and he wasn't. And he just got more and more deeply until he used to get up in the morning. He used to want to use first thing. His whole life just became centered around the ketamine. With the others, they had their sort of maybe their party kind of egg or something, and then Sunday evening they were back on track. They were going to work on the Monday, or they were back studying.
Yeah.
And his whole life was just. And then one day prior to this would have been, maybe if you met him in about 2017.
Did he go to treatment twice or once?
Twice.
Yeah, because I remember. That's right. He went the first time, and then it didn't work, and then he went back a second time, and that's when I met him the second time. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first time, he literally, I remember it vividly. He was just sitting at the bottom. I was still married to my husband at this point, and he just sat on the bottom of the stairs, and he was just sobbing. And he said, I beg you, you have to get me into treatment because I can't do this any longer. I've tried to knock it by myself and I can't do it. So I put some feelers out. I did some research. He said to me, I need to leave the UK because you, Mum, know people in the UK, and I don't want, which I completely respected. So packed him off abroad. And to be honest, the moment that I put him on the plane was just like this moment of massive relief, because all the chaos of going home every night and fearing what was I going to find, what was he going to look like, I could tell within 3 seconds of looking in his eyes if he'd used. So it was like living on a knife edge the whole time.
How was that fear?
Then he went on.
That fear that you just said, the fear of going home and finding him like that. How was that fear to live with? What was that fear like?
It was. I mean, I've sat in addiction lectures for the last 15 years, so I thought I kind of knew quite a bit.
Yeah.
But there's absolutely nothing that can prepare you as a parent or a sister or brother or whatever to be living with someone in active addiction.
Yeah.
So, all of the lies, the manipulation, the broken promises, the I promise you Monday's going to be different. There was some nights I can remember I'd go into his bedroom and he'd be absolutely out of it, which as a parent is like being stabbed. It represents everything that you all you want to do is protect and love your kids, and you see them destroy themselves. And then I would pick up Cat and I'd flush it down the loo, and there'd be an amazing scene. And I can remember sometimes he could barely walk. And I used to think, one day I'm going to wake up and he's going to fall down the stairs. He's going to break his leg or his back, because he was that. It was watching him kill himself. That's, I used to look at it and think, and I remember sometimes I used to get him and I used to shake him, and I just was crying and I'd be saying, why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you doing this to yourself? And he just said, I don't know. I don't know. And I remember I used to come in from work and I used to just think, please let him be not in his bedroom. Please let him be just doing anything, watching television. I didn't care what. But if I knew he was in his bedroom, I knew I was probably coming home to a bad situation.
Yeah. So the first time he went to treatment, he was begging you. How long did he go away for?
Well, again, this was slightly my naivety and the expense. So I sent him off for a month, and of course it didn't even scratch the surface. So he went for the month. He came back. He started using almost straight away. He was then even worse. He was absolutely terrified. So we just scooped him up. We sent him back for another 2 months. And when he was there, he loved it. I mean, it was 2 months. in how many years he'd been clean.
Mm. I mean,
and I remember, you know, on his weekly phone call to me, it would be like, oh my God.
yeah, the day I met
This is
him, he was playing basketball. He was like playing basketball. He'd been with all the other boys. And, you know, I'd done this share and I was like, you know, this middle-aged gay man telling like 200 people my story. And it was one of those shares where sometimes I'll talk about what I need to talk about and nothing else. But this was this was like a real bleh over everybody. I'd spewed my guts of telling them the ins and outs of everything. And I don't know why, but it was one of those days that's what came out of my mouth. And I remember Barney coming over to me across the basketball pitch, and he was like, "I really loved your share," and I was like, "Wow, thank you," because he was like the youngest one there. He was 19, you know, and he was one of the youngest ones there. And, you know, there was a few guys that got up and walked out during the chair. There was a few people that kind of was like really uncomfortable with it. And Barney was probably one of the ones that I really didn't think would be comfortable with what I shared. And he came over to me, and the happiness that was in his face that he could actually relate to somebody it was amazing. And I think that was probably one of the reasons why I said yes straight away. Because I said to him, when you get back to London, let's start working. I want you to stay in touch with me. While you had 2 weeks left, he had it at the treatment centre. And you know, he was amazing. Like, he was just so full of life at that point. And then he came
was
back.
full of life. It was fun. So I went out to the treatment centre to do the family programme.
That's right.
And that was brilliant. And, you know, me and him had a great time. And it was like, my God, I've got my son back. You know, I remember we were allowed to have a day out. And we went shopping. And I remember he said, I've always wanted a pair of really lovely jeans. I said, today we're having them. You know, this is the day. So I bought him a really lovely pair of jeans. We had lunch together. And I thought, oh my God, you know, this is heaven. You know, I've got my son back. And then, so he came back to London, agreed that he would go straight into another treatment centre, which was absolutely the right thing to do.
To make it clear to people, it was more of a day centre. You know, he was doing a day plan where he went in the mornings and went home in the evenings, right? At weekends.
Well, no, actually, no. To start with, he was there sleeping.
That's right. You're right, because he used to meet me on the Tuesday and Thursday, and then he started coming home. That's right. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. The idea was that, you know, there'd be that graduation. You know, have sleepover, get used to being back in London, find your rhythm, and all that sort of thing. So, and to start with, it was, you know, it's great, and he was happy, and he'd meet people and he'd say, we're going to go to a museum, we're going to go and play tennis, you know, all the things that his peers had done that I hadn't seen him do anymore.
Yeah, he was playing
for the previous couple of years.
I remember rightly, he was playing tennis twice a week. Yeah, literally.
Yeah, because he used to play years ago, before he got unwell, he was a big tennis player.
Yeah.
So he played for a club, and it was a big part of his growing up. So it was fantastic when I used to see him, you know, say, yeah, we're going to go and play, you know, so.
And then, so he was at the second treatment centre and living in. And then I remember him saying to me that when he was allowed out on weekends, he was like going to stay. He said, "Oh, this weekend I'm staying. I'm going home, but no one's going to be there." And I was like, "Well, hang on, why are you going home if no one's going to be there?" And he would make up these excuses of like, "Oh, I have to look after the dog," and stuff like this. It was like there was all the excuses started to seep back in. You know, what was that like for you at that point?
Well, that on that particular occasion that you're referring to, it was one of the early, you know, manipulations. Yeah. So he had told the treatment centre that he was coming home to spend the weekend with me. I had no idea he was coming home from the treatment centre. I think I might have been going to visit my parents, who are both very old and don't live in London. And of course, what we subsequently discovered is that he came back here. There was nobody here.
Yeah.
I probably passing must have said, going to see, because he was desperately close to his grandparents. I may have said in passing, going to see Nanny and Grandad the weekend. He's gone. Clock. Empty house. He still had the keys. And tragically, he came back here and he used.
Mm. And it wasn't long before they kicked him out, right, of the treatment centre.
So what happened on the second time he used,
Right, yeah.
it was a Sunday, and he came here, and the minute he walked in, I knew he'd been using. I didn't even need to debate it. So I said, "You've been using?" He said, "No, I haven't." I said, "Look, it doesn't matter whether we sit here for 10 minutes or 2 hours. I know, you know, but it's when you're going to be honest." So it literally went on for about an hour and a half, and in the end he said, "Okay, I used a bit." He said, "But I don't want you to tell the treatment centre."
Yeah.
So I said, "Look, I'm very sorry, but I can't be complicit. We have to be honest." And I made him there and then call them and tell them that he'd used. And so that was like for him a really difficult phase. Yeah, but we had to do it. How could we possibly be, complicit in this lie? So, and, I remember then he.
See, I remember having this conversation with him after the fact of him being thrown out there, and he was begging me to ask you. He was like saying, "I want to go back to treatment. I want to go back to treatment." And I was like saying, "Barney, A, you can't go back to treatment because you're wrapped in cotton wool there. B, you can't put that strain on your parents again." And he was like, "Yeah, but I was happy there." And I was like, "But Barney, the people that you were in treatment with won't be there when you get back there. It's a treatment centre. Time doesn't stand still, and they don't stay there." So it was in his head that he wanted to go back there. And I think the reason he wanted to go back there was because he knew he could get clean and stay clean there outside of London. Do you know what I mean? But also, of course he wanted to go back there. There were 6 swimming pools, tennis courts, everything else that was going on there. And I remember having that argument with him on the phone saying, "You can't go back there, mate. You can't ask your parents for that money because they don't have that money. You can't put people through that again." And he was like, "Yeah, you're right. And tell me what happened the week prior to the 8th of April.
So leading up, so also, so we had the 2 relapses, and at that time, I think what he was saying was, his headspace was, "I've done everything I can to get clean." That was his view. I go on to treatment. I go to 12-step meetings. I read the literature. I've got a sponsor. I don't want to use. My life is shit when I use, but it hasn't worked. That was his kind of. So his headspace was, I'm a failure at recovery, and I'm always going to be an addict. So that was his kind of headspace. Then I think a further sort of really, really, his boss, he had a job to go back to, and his boss had been amazing. His boss knew he'd been in treatment. His boss said, we'll keep your job for you because we think you're great. So he kept his job. He knew all about it. And then what happened was, one morning before work, he used. And when he got to work, someone said, "Come on." He had to fess up. The managing director got to know. The managing director, quite rightly, said, "I've got customers. You could be a risk. You're not well. You've got to leave, go away, get well, and come back."
Yeah.
And I remember so well. He walked up the stairs. This is probably a couple of weeks before the 8th. He walked in here, and he was just absolutely ashen. I thought, "My God, what's happened? What's happened?" He said, "Nothing you can do anything about." So I thought maybe he's driven the company van, he's knocked somebody over and killed them. So I said, "Yeah, we had a crash." So have you knocked somebody down and injured them? He said, "No." I said, then it's okay. We can sort it. What's the problem? And he then said that he'd used, he'd caught, he'd lost his job, and then he was completely consumed with everyone's going to say I'm a loser. You've spent all this money on treatment. You've made all these sacrifices. Everyone's stood behind me, and I promised him I was going to come clean, and I've let everybody down. And then he literally just spiraled. And he was using really heavily every day. I just couldn't get through to him. He was just in a really, really, really dark place. And then on the Friday before the 8th, I said, right, come on. I got him in the car on the Friday morning, and I drove him to an NHS treatment centre. I went in, and we were the first people there. And I think he was a bit like, kind of like, this is so like not like my treatment centre where I've been before. It was like outpatient service, but it was the only thing I could go to. They were with him for about an hour, and then I went in and I said, I'm just begging you. I just beg you, is there anywhere that can admit him? Because I said, because he's on the edge. I said, he's using so much, I'm terrified. And they said, no, there isn't anywhere. We don't have any beds. There's nowhere. We can make an appointment for him as an outpatient to meet the addictions, team. And that was on the Friday.
Oh, yeah.
And they made an appointment for him on the Tuesday, which would have been whatever it was, the 10th or the 11th.
Because I spoke to him on the evening of the Friday. He told me they'd been using. He rang me 3 times on the Friday. And I laid into him. I was like, listen, you can't keep doing this. I'm going to have to let you go if you keep doing this to Barney, because at the end of the day, you're not moving forward. You've not gone to meetings. You promised you were going to do that. And he was like, I promise I'll go. I promise I'll go. That was the Friday night. Then I spoke to him again Saturday morning, and he rang me at 6 a.m. and said, I've been up using all night. And I remember quite clearly, I didn't answer the phone at 6. I rang him back at about 8:30 in the morning, and he still had been using. And I said, okay, this is what you're going to do today. You're going to stop using, and you're going to go to a meeting tonight. He said his friend was picking him up to take him to a meeting. Then I said to him, have you eaten? He said, yes, McDonald's. And I was like, really? And he said, yeah, I had a McDonald's breakfast. And I was like, okay. And I remember, and then later on that afternoon, he rang me and said, because I said to him, listen, you can't keep doing this, blah, 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 blah. And he rang me and said, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. This was Saturday evening. So my friend's picking me up to take me to the meeting, and I will call you in the morning, and I will call you after the meeting. He didn't call me after the meeting, but he said he was going to call me. And his exact words were, I'm going to do this. You're right, and I'm going to do this. Because I said, you can't keep using Barney. It's a joke now. It's out of hand. And those were his last words. And then tell me, he obviously went to the meeting that night, or did you not go?
No. So what your memory is brilliant. So exactly, you report it pretty much exactly as it is. So that day was terrific. And then he said, I'm definitely going to go to a meeting tonight. He probably even said to me, he's spoken to you. I'm definitely going to go to a meeting tonight. And again, that old, joke, trying to control an addict. So I thought, oh, right, what can I do to get him back? So I said, okay, I'll cook. And I worked out that he would be able to get, because very close to where we are, he'd be able to be home for 9.
Yeah.
So I said, fine, I'll cook. We'll eat together, again, trying to do that whole wrap him up thing. Anyway, 9 came and went. And about 20 past 9, he walks in. Now, his trick was always, if he'd used and he didn't want me to know, he wouldn't look into my eyes.
Yeah.
And I remember so well, I was in the kitchen, there was chicken in the oven. And he came in the kitchen and he opened the fridge door and he didn't look at me. So I knew. I didn't even have to look at his face. I knew. So I said, chicken's ready. And he said, I'm not hungry. So then I knew again. I said, oh, how come you're not hungry? He used to have been to McDonald's. I said, yeah. I said, but you haven't bought a burger, have you? And he went, no. I said, and you haven't been to the meeting, have you? And he went, no. I said, basically, you didn't go to the meeting, you went to McDonald's, you scored, you used in the McDonald's toilet, and now you come home. And he went, yeah, yeah. And I just kind of put my head in my hands and said, what's it going to take? What is it going to take? And we were just having the same conversations around and around. And then we sat together, and it was very, very hard. He just said, Mum, I can't live without drugs. He said, I can't live with drugs and I can't live without them. He said, I want to be like normal people. I want to be able to do what normal people do. He said, do you think I want this? He said, do you think this is a life that anybody wants? Well, all I think about is using. He said, I just want to just disappear. And he spent, because his stomach was really messed up big time, he used to spend lots of time in the bath to deal with the cramps. So I remember that night, he said, anyway, look, I'm going to go and have a bath and then I'm going to watch a film.
And then, was that the last you spoke to him? I mean, I remember getting the text message from you the day after. You texted me to let me know. Actually, that wasn't you. It was Barney's. It was Barney's friend. I'm not sure. He sent me a text to say, "Hey, I need to let you know that Barney had passed away that morning when you'd found him." I can't imagine how you felt. I mean, as a sponsor, it devastated me. I was numb. I felt that I'd let him down. I felt that I didn't know what I was doing in that sense of trying to help people, and it threw me.
Yeah.
I can't even start to imagine how you felt finding your son.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't sort of, that night, because there'd been so many nights that had been similar, him using and me saying, please stop, and I beg you, and just trying every single thing I possibly could. I didn't predict that night, even though he had been saying all week and for some previous weeks that he couldn't see the point in living anymore. He did say that quite explicitly. There is no point in living because this isn't life. I don't, whatever this isn't life.
For a 9-year-old boy to say those words, it's just heartbreaking. It's just devastating.
It was like, I think it was that thing where he kind of knew that his physical body had been so damaged. He was in so much pain so much of the time. He was in so much emotional pain all of the time. And he said to me, I know it's really abnormal to wake up in the morning and to want to use. Nobody that I know is doing that, And when he was in rehab, I think what he loved was that, he couldn't. That's why he kept wanting to go back, because he knew there was no way he could access any drugs. But he also said, I know that I can't spend the rest of my life in a treatment centre.
Yeah.
He said that isn't realistic. And so, in the morning, that Sunday morning, he always slept with his bedroom door closed. And so when I came downstairs and saw his bedroom door open, I knew that something was not going to be right.
What's life been like since July the 8th, 2019, 2018? 2 years on.
So
What's it like for you today?
yeah. I mean, I'm in a better place than I was then, for sure. I mean, at the beginning, a few months after he died, I was just, I can barely remember it. But I've been, sorry,
Right.
I've been very, very lucky. I've got the most incredible friends that just, I mean, in the early days, because I lived with him and it was just me on my own, I had friends come and stay on a rota because they said, we don't want you being by yourself. So friends were magnificent. My parents, bless them, they were so old that they couldn't handle it. So we kind of tried to not really, they were just beyond devastated. They just adored, he was their first born grandchild. My brother was amazing. And my work fantastic. They got me a therapist. I saw a therapist twice a week. And I suppose the kind of things that have kept me going were partly, obviously I've got another son who lives with me. He's only 21.
How did it affect your other son?
It's been very, very difficult. The relationship between he and I has been very, very, very difficult. I think probably because, he I think he's only 21 now. So in the space of 3 years, he had his parents divorced.
Yeah.
He had his family home sold. His brother dies. He's had so much. So his way was to just say all the time, Barney was very unhappy and he's in a much better place.
Yeah.
Barney was really, really struggling and he's happy where he is. And I sometimes thought this was going to happen because he just was caning it and it could end this way. It's really interesting because actually lockdown has actually helped our relationship because it's forced us to come together. Whereas before we've almost been like two individuals living in the same bricks and mortar, but not really connecting. Whereas like on the anniversary of Barney's death, Sam and I sat down, we ate Barney's favourite meal, really symbolic. And he was saying, oh, well, I'm going to get a Dr. Pepper.
What was his favourite meal?
Tony, he was such an Englishman. So one of his favourite meals was chicken pie with mashed potato.
Yes.
And we sat and we had it and we cried and we laughed and we, and I suppose what I'm trying to do is to live a life that he never got the opportunity to.
Yeah.
His life was so cruelly taken away from him. And, I suppose what I sort of feel is if I can do anything through keeping his memory alive, it can help anybody to say, life life is there. Take it with both hands. Don't give up. That this is no dress rehearsal. We only get one chance. And I look back and I just think, if only. But that night, it could have been 2 weeks later. Could have been a month later. I don't judge myself or my ex-husband. We did what we did everything we could.
Yeah, you did.
He just unfortunately got so deep in, um, and he just couldn't see a way out.
No,
He couldn't see a way out.
no.
He couldn't see a way out. And I think, yeah, I mean, I suppose, I mean, obviously there are days when, you know, like there'll be an awful reminder. It might be something really simple, like something on Facebook.
Yeah,
There'll be a reminder that'll pop up,
yeah,
and it'll be like a punch in the stomach, or it'll be something which, you know, doesn't make me feel like it's a very nice emotion. It's not an emotion I'm very proud of, but I might sometimes look at one of his friends who's maybe doing something really special, or I don't know, going off to having a phase in their life. It might be, you know, I dealt with the whole going off to uni thing because, you know, but that is also another thing which we haven't touched on, which I think is massive, which is the whole massive stigma and shame associated with addiction.
yeah.
You know, Barney once said to me, you know, Mum, he said, if I had cancer, he said, everybody we know would know.
No, that's true.
He said, and I would just be off, I'd be getting treatment, I wouldn't feel like I was being shamed. And I think what is interesting about the way that addiction and the madness drags you in is that when Barney was in treatment and it was Christmas, I remember genuinely thinking that I was going to get my other son to mimic Barney on the phone to his grandparents to pretend that he was in London.
It's crazy.
And I mean, looking back now, it's like, you what? But because we never told them he had a drug issue, we never said anything. We certainly never said he'd gone off to treatment until eventually, you know, Sam said, well, we can't do that because our voices aren't the same. So yeah, we made the story about he was been travelling and he'd always wanted to go around the world travelling. But lots of my even friends didn't know because I thought they were going to judge me, or they were going to judge him, or they were going to feel, well, why doesn't he just pull himself together? Or why doesn't the family just put their foot down a bit more? Why haven't they got any boundaries around there? You know, all of that stuff, if you don't really know what addiction's like, it's very easy to have an opinion on it.
Oh, totally. Everybody's got an opinion, you know. And when we're in the same position as Barney was in, you know, I would go to the shops and it would be so traumatic just going to the shops because I knew everybody was looking at me, everyone was judging me, everyone had their own opinion and already made up their mind of what type of person I was. They would hold on to their bags. When I got in a lift, people would change their bags from shoulder to shoulder to keep it tighter. You know, the stigma that went with the way I was and the way that Barney was really, really hard. And you know what? There was no love and understanding from those people in the street. There was no love and understanding from my, you know, my family as such. My mum always loved me and my dad just didn't know how to cope with it. But you know what? There was never that understanding, that connection, because people don't know how to deal with it. They don't. So, you know, they straight away, they think the worst of you. And, you know, I that's why it's so important for me today to never go back to that. Do you know what I mean? And it's really important that what we're doing with this program is showing, by you saying and expressing how it made you feel as a mother of what your son went through, is really, really important and really, really powerful. It's really powerful.
I mean,
I don't want to cry during this because I just don't want to cry, and it's making me want to cry because it's so important that this message gets.
No, I mean, I know that you gave him everything. You know, I know that you tried so hard with him, and he looked up to you, and he said, you know, Tony's been able to do it, you know, but for some reason he just had it in his head that he couldn't do it.
He was powerless.
And
He was so consumed by it that, you know, there
he was
was
so consumed by it. He was so consumed by it. What I think is probably the worst thing for a parent is to know that your son or daughter is in so much pain that they would choose death over living. You know, I will never, ever forget that that's what he felt. And I couldn't save him from that. You know, I spent so long trying to save him. And I read all the books. And then, you know, I had therapists telling me, you've got to go to Al-Anon because you can only save yourself and you're going to just make yourself ill if you continue like this. And I'd go to Al-Anon meetings. But there's something in you that's just so programmed. You know, I used to think, well, if I do this, or if I go and buy that chicken pie, and if I do this, but actually, you know, it didn't, you know. And what is also, well, I think one thing that has really helped me as well is that he had so many friends who adored him, who looked out for him, who tried to help him, and they're still in my life, which is so, you know, we meet the boys and the girls.
amazing.
And, you know, he's left such a massive void in all of their lives. And I know for those that, you know, saw him in the week and the days, you know, leading up to his death, it's been very, very, very hard for them. You know, very, very hard. And I don't think, I remember at his funeral, I started off, there were 450 people in the church. And I started off by saying, you know, you probably never knew how loved you were, but everyone here today is coming to honour you. And I just, you know, just have to hope that somewhere he is happier. You know.
The recovery for you from losing a son to addiction to what's the process been like?
It's been, I think, it's been an up and down one. So it really has been. So there's been moments of utter desperation and me thinking, you know, my life's never going to be the same again. I'm never going to be happy. And then I've had phases where I thought, okay. I mean, it sounds such a cliche, but that's sort of counting my blessings, where I say, you know, I've got so much more support than so many people. I've got friends who love me. I've got another son who loves me. I've got my parents still alive. I've got family. You know, I've got so much. Where it tends to completely derail me is 2 weeks ago, I was on a Hampstead Heath and I bumped into someone I hadn't bumped into for years. And she was with her husband, who I didn't know, and her son. And she said, oh my God, hi, it's been years. Because we used to live in Hackney. She said, oh my goodness me, how's Barney, how's Sam? And in that moment, I was like, it was like I was on freeze frame. I didn't know, do I lie? And I thought, no, I'm not going to lie, because that's like denying his existence. So I said, oh, Sam is good, he's 21. And then I just said, Barney isn't with us anymore. And then, you know, that thing where everyone is in a circle and no one quite knows what to say. So it's times like that, or birthdays, or, you know, when I think, God, he would have been 23 this March, you know. What would he have been doing? Where would he have been going? We'd have been having a beer somewhere, doing a picnic or something. And then I think about, he loved, when he was in treatment, he said one of his favourite things was going to one of the orphanages at Christmas and giving out gifts. And he said to me, I couldn't believe the gratitude for a little pad and half a dozen crayons. He said, can't have been worth more than 30 pence. Yeah. He said, but it was amazing. And he got that real sense of doing good. And I just think he probably would have made a great teacher. And he would have been so understanding. So it's for me as a mum, it's about trying to move forward. I mean, a lot of the time, I think I probably haven't coped very well, because what my sort of tactic has been just to be, I've got to be busy. Yeah. I've always got to be working, or I've always got to be socialising, and I've always got to have something in my diary. And I really, really struggled at being in lockdown. I was like, because all of a sudden, all my running away options were gone.
Well,
couldn't.
Yeah.
All I was left with was me and my thoughts. And that made me realise how much I use diversion, running away, to basically run away from the pain of it. But I would say, in terms of if I was speaking to other parents who perhaps lost children, or other partners who've lost children, it has got, or partners who lose partners, it has got easier than it was in the raw, where you'd wake up in the morning, you just feel sick. You just think, how am I going to get through today? It is easier.
I love you.
I don't think the pain will go, because you never get over losing someone that you love so much.
But you know what? I always believe, when we lose someone, we don't lose them altogether. They're still with us. I still see a glimpse sometimes of my dad out the corner of my eye. I had this, I turn into them. I sound like people that I've lost, partners that I lost earlier on, when I was growing up, and I had a boyfriend, and he's still with me. I still have that feeling sometimes that there's certain situations will happen, and I start to laugh, and it makes me laugh, because I think, oh my God, this happened then, or there's so many little things that take me back to those good times, as well as the sad, and I just think that you're an incredible woman. I've wanted this conversation with you for so long, and I'm so happy. I'm going to cry again. I'm so happy, believe it or not, even though I'm about to cry, that you've done this, and that you've got this message across, because you know what? As I said before, it's really important. It's really important that people hear Barney's story. It really is. And I really just hope that wherever he is, he's DJing and doing what he loved best. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for asking me. I feel very honoured. And anything that I can do for anybody, addiction is a terrible, terrible disease. Nobody chooses it. Nobody would ever want it. And I always say to anyone out there in recovery is fighting a battle that most people have no idea of. And, people like you are heroes, because it's a damn hard thing to be doing.
Thank you. Hi guys, thanks for watching. If you want to see more, subscribe down below.